kitchen, folks. In this film today, I'm going to make a brand new flavoured cider that I've never made before. I'm going to be making a watermelon flavoured cider. So here are my key ingredients for this brew. Well, it's a watermelon cider, so I need a watermelon. Now, I'm not going to use all of that. I'm going to use half of that watermelon. It's a fairly hefty thing, like a bowling ball sized. I don't know what the weight is because my scales go off the chart when I put it on there. But yeah, that's what I'm working with. It's a cider, so I've got apples, and I've currently got 4 kilos in the sink. I may use more, I may use less. We'll see. They're all windfall off my apple trees. And then I've got dry ingredients. So I'll start with the sugars. I'm using 2 different kinds of sugars. I'm using dextrose monohydrate brewing sugar, and there is 500 grams of that in this tub. I'm also using lactose milk sugar from Young's, and I've got 150 grams of that in this tub. Now, my sugars serve a dual purpose in this cider. The brewing sugar is there to up the original gravity, which means that I'll end up with a stronger final alcohol by volume. The lactose is non-fermentable, and that will hopefully mean it will take the dryness off the cider, and I'll end up with a cider that has some residual sweetness in it. It's watermelon flavoured, and it doesn't seem right to have it dry as watermelon flavoured, so I'm putting some lactose in there so it makes it just that little bit sweeter. My other dry ingredients are, of course, the yeast, which is Van Class dried active yeast, the yeast nutrient from Young's, and some pectolase. In case this turns out cloudy, hopefully this will break down pectic enzymes and I'll end up with a clear brew. I'm going to be making this cider in a TecTake Steam Press stroke steam juicer, whatever it is, it serves the same purpose. And I'm going to be fermenting in a demijohn. 4.54 litres, 1 imperial gallon. I've talked enough, let's crack on. So today I'm going to start with my sugars, and here's my lactose. I'm going to put a little bit of that in this funnel and I'm going to work it through, and what I want to do is to put my sugars in the bottom of this demijohn. Why is that? You will find out. So I'm just going to get this in there. This is going to take a little bit of persuasion, so there's no point in you watching me keep rattling the funnel. I'll come back to you when the lactose is in. That's the lactose in, and now I've got to do exactly the same with the brewing sugar, trying to get it in the funnel and not out of it. I'll come back to you when it's all in there. So that's all my sugars in the demijohn. And now I want to get some water into this jug. I want to fill it up. This holds 2 litres. And that is going in the base of my steam press. I've got to add another 2 litres in there, as so, and now there are 4 litres of water in the base of my steam press. Right, let me show you something. This steams, obviously, it gets hot, the water comes to a boil. That steam goes through that spout. That spout is in a pan with a little hole down there. That little hole is connected to this pipe, and that pipe now goes into my demijohn where the sugars are. Right, okay, we can see this starting to come together. Now on top of this goes the colander basket, which holds the fruit that the steam is going to juice. Okay, so boiling hot fruit juice is going to land on that. That will dissolve the sugars because they do dissolve easily. I will need to swill it round a bit, but essentially dissolving the sugars will not be an issue. And that is how the steam press works. So now I've got to fill the colander basket with fruit, and I'm going to begin with the bowling ball. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, in my life I have never ever cut a watermelon, so here goes nothing. I've got my sharpest knife on the case. Hopefully this isn't going to slip. I shall put my fingers above it just in case. Or my hand above it. Oh, it's going down nicely actually. That's lovely. Okay, two lovely halves of watermelon. Now, one half is bigger than the other, unfortunately. I didn't mean it to be like that. Do I keep the big half or the small half? We all know that I'm going to keep the big half, don't we? Right, so with my big half, I'm going to cut this into quarters. It cuts so easy, actually. I'm really pleased it does. I thought it was going to be like a butternut squash or something like that, which can be a nightmare at times. But there's my lovely quarters now. And again, each of those quarters I'm going to cut down again into eighths now. I sound like an 80s dealer, don't I? Quarters and eighths. If that went over your head, don't worry about it. Don't Google it. Right. Okay, I've got 4 nice looking pieces just there. And then with each of my big pieces, I'm going to try and go down and separate the red from the skin. So the nice flesh from the skin. Again, I'm just making it up as I go along because I've never actually done this before, but it seems right. Okay, that's a pretty good job there. Just get this off. And this is so full of juice. So let's just try a bit. Wow. There's a reason it's called watermelon. That's nice. I'm going to get so much out of this, it's unbelievable. So with my watermelon, I'm simply going to break it down into smaller pieces or cut it down into smaller pieces like this. And I'll cut each one of those in half or into smaller pieces than what it is. I'm just doing it roughly, it doesn't matter. And then all these pieces are going to go into the steam press. I'm going to cut the remainder up, get it in there, and then I'll come back to you. Right, that's all my watermelon in there. And I can already hear it dripping through. Now it's time to get my apples sorted. Okay, so my apples, I'm just going to cut into quarters, each one like so. And then these are going to go in the press on top of the watermelon. I've got to fill this right to the top. There's no point in you watching me just chopping apples. I'll come back to you when they're chopped and they're in there. Right, that's all of my apples in the steam press. I want to get the lid on, push that down. It pretty much seals, but there are some small gaps, but they will disappear as the fruit decompresses when the juice becomes extracted from it. So now all I've got to do is to put the gas on, and I put it on very low. And now I just leave this and I'm playing a very slow and long waiting game. I could nuke it at a high temperature, but doing that, it's just going to burn through that water really quickly. The steam's going to go out and I have to take the basket out, replace it. It's not good doing it that way. The best way to do this is nice and slowly. Okay, I should only have to top up that water a little bit after about 4 hours or so. So I'm expecting this to take, this entire process, somewhere between 6 and 8 hours. As I've not used watermelon before, I'm not sure how quickly it will lose its water, and it could lose it quite quickly. So we'll see. So I'll come back to you with an update in about an hour to 90 minutes time, and I'll show you what it's looking like at that point. Right, catch you then. Well, I'm on 80 minutes and there's nothing coming down the pipe yet, but there's definitely dripping going on internally. And the apple is no longer touching the lid. The lid is sat on secure, so it is beginning to compress. It won't be long. I reckon within 10 minutes I'm going to see something coming through there. And just as predicted, 10 minutes later, we've got dripping. And it's a nice red watermelon colour too. So this really is just a case of playing the waiting game. I'll come back to you in half an hour and we'll have an update then. Okay, the level of fruit's definitely dropped. This is 20 minutes later. There's a fair bit of liquid in there. Now I need to swill this around to make it work to dissolve the sugar. So I hope you're loving the silver crocs. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my oven gloves to pick this up because it gets hot. with the very, very hot liquid that's going in there. And I'm just going to literally go like this. And this will then cause that sugar to dissolve a little bit quicker. I don't want to be left with any sugar left in the bottom of the demijohn. Right, I'll put that back now. And I'll repeat that process probably another 3 or 4 times. You don't need to watch me do it again, but just showing you what I do. Okay, it's all going well, but I want to top the water up in the reservoir that's in there. So I just thought I'd show you what I've got. You can see, looking at the state of the apples, how they're all just breaking down like that. That's as the liquid leaves them, that's what happens. I'm just going to take this colander basket out. I'll put that on a chopping board. So you can see the liquid there, and you can see underneath. And in actual fact, there is plenty of water still in there, but I'm just going to pour a bit more in. Oops. That will do. And I'm going to put the colander basket back on top. Lid back on. Fire and forget. That's it. Okay, it's about 8 hours altogether into the process. I've switched everything off. It's dark outside. Let me show you what I've got. You can see how much the apple has dropped down there. I mean, that literally has completely decompressed as the liquid has come out of it. And the watermelon, of course. Now, I've not got the demijohn there. I've just got a bottle in case I get any more drips coming through. But I have filled the demijohn. So I've got a nice gallon, 4.54 litres. It's too warm for me to add the yeast to tonight and to take the gravity, but I'm going to do that tomorrow morning, which will be preparation day 2 / brew day 1. So I'll catch you in the morning. Morning folks, it's preparation day 2 / brew day 1 for my watermelon cider. So today I want to take the original gravity reading and then get my dry ingredients into the must, which has cooled down to room temperature. It's looking quite nice actually. Now before I can take a gravity reading with this one, I'm going to actually have to pour it into another demijohn. And the reason for that is that I can see that it's separated into layers. Can you see that layer at the bottom? It's lighter just down here. Now, no matter how much I stir that at the top, it's not going to get to the bottom. So I need to ensure that this is mixed for consistency. So I'm going to pour it into this clean and sanitised demijohn, and then take it from there into the hydrometer tube to take the original gravity reading. I'm getting a bit of wastage and that's unfortunate, but I have actually got a little bit more juice which has collected overnight in the bottom of the pan, so I can top it up with that and it's going to be of the same constituency. Now it's going to be such a small amount, it ain't going to affect the gravity reading. Right, let's see going from here if I can take an accurate original gravity reading now. And that looks like it's going to be okay. So let's get that floating in the middle. Now bearing in mind I've got lactose in here, so the original gravity will not be indicative of the exact ABV I'm going to get at the end. And that is absolutely spot on, because I'm starting on an original gravity of 1.060 1060. So I need to get my dry ingredients in now. I've got no dry funnels left, so we'll just have to do it with a teaspoon. And I'm going to go for 2 rounded teaspoonfuls of yeast nutrient, but I'm going to do it in sort of 3 spoons because I don't want to tip it on the outside of the demijohn. But it's the equivalent of 2 rounded or slightly heaped teaspoons that have gone in there. I'm then going to add my pectolase, which I can't fit the teaspoon into, so I'm just going to tip. Yeah, that looks like sort of 2 heaped teaspoons worth that's gone in. And finally, with a different teaspoon, I'm going to get into my yeast. And again, I'm not going to heap the teaspoon up because I don't want it to go everywhere. So that's 1, that's 2, and that's 3. And that's going to be sort of like the equivalent of a level teaspoonful of yeast that's gone in there. Right, I'm going to get the airlock in, and it's my bendy airlock. You've not seen this for a while. This is what happens when you put a plastic airlock in a dishwasher. Still works though. Right, okay. I'm going to have a little tidy round. I'll come back to you in about 5 minutes. Right, there we are. Airlock in, cleaned and tidied and labelled up. Watermelon cider, Brew Day 1, 27th of August 2024. Original gravity 1.060. I'll come back to you when fermentation begins. It'll probably be later today. See you then. Well, it's not 2 hours later. We've got Krausen and we've got airlock activity and bubbling already happening. So fermentation has begun within 2 hours. I suspect this is going to be a fast one. I'll come back to you in a day's time or so. See you then. Well, it's Brew Day 2 and somebody's got a little bit excited overnight. Can't beat a bit of night excitement, can you? Right, so what I'm going to do is get this out of there. Yuck. Get the tap on. Quick rinse. Bish bash bosh. Let's not mess about. It's no big deal. There we go. My wife's in the shower, so I better get that tap off. I'll be getting told off. Right. Okay, that looks to have been cleaned out okay. Now this is going to continue puking out, so what I think I'm going to do is fit a blow-off pipe. And I'm going to put that back for the time being. Just going to give this a little rinse because it's all sticky. Right, I need to sort of blow-off pipe out. I'll come back to you shortly. And there we go, watermelon cider blow-off pipe fitted. Catastrophe averted. I'll come back to you at the end of fermentation. See you then. Okay, watermelon cider update. It's Brew Day 3. The Krausen has now died back. It's not blowing through anymore and it's just popping away nicely. So I'm going to put this away and I'll come back to you when fermentation is finished. Catch you then. Hey folks, it's Brew Day 25 for my watermelon cider, and I'm just gonna, in this little segment of film today, top this up a little bit with apple juice, and I'll explain to you what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So first of all, there's a little bit of an air gap there in the top, which I'm not too keen on. I like to try and have as little surface exposed as possible to the air, and when I say the air, it's actually CO2 that's in there. But the less exposure there is, the less surface area, the less chance there is of it turning out like vinegar. So what I've done now, I should have taken an interim gravity reading before doing that and then another one after doing it, but you know what, I can't be bothered because it's such a tiny amount that it really isn't going to make a difference. The dilution is going to be minuscule, and what it will also do is kickstart the fermentation. So the sugars that are in this will ferment a bit more. So any dilution will be offset by the other fermentation that takes place. So I'm really not worried about it. If I was putting in, you know, that much, then I would have gone through that process. But for that much, I can't be bothered. Right, so you've seen that I've done that. The next bit of film that you see from me will be at the end of fermentation when I'm hopefully getting ready for bottling. So catch you then. From the kitchen, folks. This is Brew Day 104 for my watermelon cider. It's Brew Day 104 because I've just been leaving it to clear. It's not perfectly clear, there's a bit of a haze, but it's good enough. let's have a look at it. So here it is in the demijohn, and if I put my hands behind, you can see them through it. It will look perfectly fine in the glass. I think that this is a pectin haze or some sort of haze caused by using the steam press. I'm not going to worry about it. Oh, and I get asked about these all the time. We use them for stopping the slugs eating the plants in the garden. So we crush them up once they've been dehydrated and then sprinkle them in the plant pots. And the slugs tend to avoid them because they're a bit sharp. So just in case you wondered, now to do in my brew. Right, back to the brew. So in today's film, I'm going to get that out of here and into these. But before I can begin, I need to add some priming sugar. This is just standard household sugar, like you put in a cuppa, and I'm putting the equivalent of a teaspoon into each bottle. That will allow a carbonation to happen because there is yeast left in suspension in there. And when it finds this sugar, it will smash it apart, and that smashed apart sugar will create CO2. Pressure will build up in the bottle, hence the sparkle. Fingers crossed. I've also got a small bottle today because I was thinking, am I going to get 6 bottles or am I going to get 5.5? Well, the last one I did, I only managed 5.5, and the one before that was a struggle to get 6. So I am just going to go for 5.5. And if there's out left over, I'll just drink it. So I put a bit less sugar in this one. Don't want a bottle bomb. So I need to get the bung out of the demijohn. The siphoning tube goes in. I'm going to try and hold it in place with this clip at the top, the black clip. It's just gone into the sediment. There's only about 5 mil of sediment, if that, probably a bit less. The first bit that comes out is going to be murky, but it's going to go into my hydrometer tube. Right, let's crack on. Right, murky, 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 clear, 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 clear. Okay, and into the bottle. Right, so first impressions smell-wise is that it just smells like apple cider. I'm not getting any watermeloniness from it, but watermelon isn't the most flavoursome of fruit, so that shouldn't really surprise me. But I am hoping that there will be some residual flavour after conditioning, and that the lactose sugar that I've put in there will bring that through a little bit. We'll have to see. Anyway, this is coming out at a good steady pace. Let's have a change of angle. And into bottle number 3. There's a good reaction to the priming sugar. You can see just there, that's got a head on it. So that's an encouraging sign at this early stage. I've now got my tactical glass in the sink in case I have got more than what's going to go in there. And in actual fact, I think I might have judged this right because that demijohn is getting pretty low. So 1, 2, 3 and out and into the next one. It's probably my least favourite part of the whole process actually, the bottling. I do find it a bit tedious. And into the glass. But that was it, that's it. That's all I've got in the glass, so I've actually just judged that right. That's it, look, we're done. And you can really hear the reaction. So I'm just going to remove that. Give it a little shake. You know, it's like when you get to a certain age, you have to give it a little shake. So before I start sticking bungs in, let's just have a little look at it. So it looks a bit cloudy in there, but when it got down to the bottom, it literally was clawing the sediment again. So I get definite cider vibes from the smell. It's very pleasant. Just tastes like apple cider. Slight scrumpiness, but not to the point where it's acidic and vinegary. Just that sort of raw apple flavour. I think this is going to be a good drop. Right, let's also have a look at the ABV, the alcohol by volume. Well, the lactose means it's finished higher than it would have done, obviously. It's actually finished Same as my last one did. 1010, 1.010, 1010. Well, there's no point in wasting it. I am from Yorkshire. I'll just try not to drink the hydrometer. Right, that'll keep me regular. I'll put that to one side. Okay, so from the gravity readings, I now need to work out the alcohol by volume. So I go 1.060, which was the original gravity. I deduct from that 1.010, which was the final gravity, 0.05, and then I multiply this by 131.25. And that equals, 6.56% ABV. I'm just going to say 6.6% because a fractional fermentation will take place in those bottles. Now I've added that priming sugar. Only a little one, but it will up it just a little bit. So let's just say 6.6 and be right happy. Right, it's now time to get my bungs in my bottles. I'll just demonstrate this on one bottle. You don't need to watch me do it loads of times. So bung. Plastic bung, in hot water, which gives it a final sanitize and it makes it malleable to push in. And it burns my fingers, but in it goes. Push down, that's in, nice and tight. Now, it won't stay in because when the pressure builds up in the bottle from the secondary fermentation, from the CO2 being produced, that will go pew. So, the cage, or as the French say, le cage, or as Nicholas says, Nicolas Cage. Anyway, I'm just going to tighten this one up. There we go. And that is pretty good to me. So that is bunged and caged. It just needs a rinse and labelling now. I've got the others to do, so I shall come back to you when I've done them. I've stripped off, I got a bit warm. Anyway, for my beer bottle, I can't obviously put a bung and a cage in it. I need to put a crown cap on it using the capper. So just goes on top and down. I shouldn't really do it on top of the worktop either because it should be done down into the sink. I'm doing it for demonstration purposes on camera. So just nice and gently. That's it. And it's gone. There we go. Capped. So I'm just going to give these a little rinse off. Great British rinse off. Right, I'm just leaving these bottles to drain on the drainer. I need to have a little tidy around and make the labels up. I shall come back to you shortly. Right, I've got this Fomimo Bluetooth printer. It's connected to my iPhone using a program called Printmaster. I'm going to produce my labels, and here they are. I love a gadget. Right, so I'll just get a bottle dried off, label peeled, label on bottle, right way round, et voila, or as the French would say, le et voila. Right, I've got the rest of them to do, I'll come back to you shortly. And there they are, like 6 lovely Christmassy crackers. In the living room, folks, this is where my watermelon cider is going to condition, and it's up here on top of my drinks cabinet. It's generally quite warm, although it's a bit chilly at the minute at 16.5, but I don't have the fire lit. It will warm up. The watermelon cider will stay up here for at least a month, and during that time the CO2 will build up inside. That will create the sparkle and hopefully the flavours will develop. I'd like to be able to taste a bit of watermelon if possible. Let's see. Anyway, I'll catch up with you in 2025 for the opening and tasting. See you then, folks. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. This is brew day 144 for my watermelon cider, and tonight I am going to open and taste it. Now, I was going to leave this a bit longer because the weather's been cold and it's not been great for conditioning. However, let me just show you that bung. that has considerably raised, which would suggest to me that this has very likely carbed and therefore, hopefully, is going to be all right to drink. So let's give it a little whirl. So this is my first opening of 2025. I've got all of my ciders virtually to open yet from the 2024 season. I've done it very slowly this time. I've just left them to condition, and I prefer that. I like to take my time with it, and it means that I'm going to have a nice supply of ciders now through the summer until I start making them again. So, all good. Alles klar. Right, so I'm going to take the cage off. So, fingers crossed, am I going to get a pop? Yes, I did. It wasn't massive, I must admit, but I did get a pop. There's no immediate rush of bubbles to the top of the bottle, so maybe this could do with a bit longer, but let's have a look. Let's have a smell first. Just smells like cider. Right, let's have a look. Oh no, that is a sparkler. There is no denying it. That is a sparkler. Come on. I'm happy with that. Look at that. That's lovely. Right, listen. Yes. So let's just get that picture for the front thumbnail for the film. Right, and now let's proceed with the tasting. So, a very appley smell, slightly woody. I hope that's not a bad thing. Let's have a taste. Really, really bubbly on the tongue. Quite a nice smooth bubble as well, not a sharp, aggressive, overly carbed one. Now that's a nice flavour. That really is a nice flavour. It reminds me of Woodpecker Cider. You remember Woodpecker Cider? It were a bit too sweet. It's not quite as sweet as that, but there's something about it which reminds me of that. Now don't forget I put lactose sugar in this one, so it has got residual sweetness, and it is clearly a medium cider this. It's not a dry, it's a medium. It's a strong cider flavour, slightly veering towards scrumpiness when it first hits your tongue, but then as it envelops and you've held it in your mouth for a little bit, then you get that nice rounded cider flavour, which was reminiscent of a kind of woodpeckery taste. Now the watermelon, I can neither smell it or taste it. And to be fair, watermelon's not the most flavoursome of fruits. It was an experiment to see if it did add anything to it flavour-wise. It hasn't. It just tastes like an apple cider. And if you'd given me this blind, there's no way on earth I would have ever guessed that it had watermelon in it. Now, it's entirely possible that after a longer condition, if I leave this for 3 months, 6 months, that there will be a taste of watermelon comes through, and I will hold a bottle back. And then if that does happen, I'll do a separate video with that in, just to sort of talk about that and explain how the flavour's developed. I suspect it probably won't, because watermelon really isn't a flavoursome fruit, is it? Anyway, folks, I'm going to enjoy this tonight in the conservatory. Hope you've enjoyed the film. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, all that sort of stuff. It does help. And if you can subscribe, then it makes me a happy chappy. Right, thanks very much, and I will catch you on the next film, whatever that may be. Cheers, folks.